Breaking news tonight, crowds in the streets of Ferguson, Missouri after a grand jury decides no charges will be filed against a police officer in the shooting of Michael Brown. And President Obama is speaking about the decision out of Ferguson at any minute now.
And here at home, the LAPD is on citywide tactical alert as prosecutors gather to make their voices heard following the grand jury's decision. A
wild and dangerous pursuit comes to a head in Culver City with a suspect on the roof of a building. See how it all ends. And good evening, I'm Colleen Sullivan.
I'm David Ona. Welcome to Eyewitness News and LA56, LA's only live local newscast at 7 p.m. We begin, of course, with that breaking news from Ferguson, Missouri. A grand jury has decided not to indict a police officer for the shooting death of Michael Brown. This is a scene right now in Ferguson. People are filling the streets. We have been watching this as the crowd continues to gather. They certainly have received the news, but we are watching them closely to see if there's any kind of reaction. ABC's Marcy Gonzalez has more on the grand jury's decision.
They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
Officer Darren Wilson will not face charges in the shooting death of unarmed teenager Michael Brown. The decision from the grand jury, which pored over evidence and testimony in the case for more than 3 months, was announced today.
They are the only people who have heard and examined every witness and every piece of evidence. They discussed and debated the evidence among themselves before arriving at their collective decision. After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision.
Brown died on August 9th after police say he robbed this convenience store.
We're taking a stealing in progress.
Investigators claimed Officer Darren Wilson was responding when he stopped Brown and his friend who were walking in the street.
21 to 25 or 22. You guys see me?
Police told ABC News it quickly escalated, with Brown attacking the officer.
His face was swollen, so he'd obviously been hit or punched or something like that.
But the Brown family's attorney questioned that claim after this video was released showing Officer Wilson 2 hours after the shooting.
I think the lack of injuries on the officer's face demonstrates that they exaggerated his injuries.
And witnesses maintained that Brown had his hands up as if to surrender when he was shot. His death leading to protests that were at times violent and sparked a strong response from police. The Missouri National Guard now activated again. Police and local officials saying they are ready to respond to reaction to the grand jury's decision. Marcy Gonzalez, ABC News, Ferguson, Missouri.
Michael Brown's parents issued a statement shortly after the grand jury's decision was read, saying, quote, "We are profoundly disappointed that the killer of our child will not face the consequence of his actions. While we understand that many others share our pain, we ask that you channel your frustration in ways that will make a positive change. We need to work together to fix the system that allowed this to happen. Join us in our campaign to ensure that every police officer working the streets in this country wears body camera. We respectfully ask that you please keep your protest peaceful. Answering violence with violence is not the appropriate reaction. Let's not just make noise, let's make a difference," end quote. Michael Brown's parents say they will speak about the grand jury's decision at a news conference to be held tomorrow at a St. Louis area church, and that news conference will be at 9 a.m. Los Angeles time.
In the meantime, the LAPD is on modified tactical alert, but the department has already been calling on community groups to keep any protests peaceful. Eyewitness News reporter Leanne Suter is live in Leimert Park, where civil rights activists asked people to gather. How's it looking right now, Leanne?
David, as they asked, everything remaining peaceful at this point. In fact, quite a few folks have left the park here. You see live behind me here, just a handful, a smaller group remaining. A few of them have crossed the street and are now picketing over on the side there on Crenshaw, but for the most part, they remain here in the park, very calm, civilized, and very disappointed. Take a listen and a look at their reaction when that decision came down.
That no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
You can see their disappointment and frustration on their faces. That was not the decision that those gathered here in Leimert Park were hoping for. They said they wanted to see Officer Darren Wilson face charges in the shooting death of Michael Brown, but that was not the case today. As you said, many of the city leaders, church leaders around here urging everyone who gathered here at Leimert Park to remain peaceful despite that decision, and that is exactly what is happening. But so far, it really is an overwhelming sense of disappointment with that decision.
I think that is a travesty. It's definitely something that we have to really take close evaluation of how our system is not working.
We're all kind of like really numb because it's unfortunate that this is expected.
Back live here at the scene again, everything remaining peaceful at this point here in Leimert Park. As I said, a handful of about 10 people have started to march along Crenshaw here a little bit. I see them making their way back here to Leimert Park. But again, everything calm at this point. As you said, LAPD on modified tactical alert in case things do get out of hand. Live in Leimert Park, Leanne Suter, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Leanne, thank you for that. Leimert Park is peaceful, but there are some splintering crowds going out into the community. This is a group that is now marching through Crenshaw and at times blocking some streets. Let's go to Bill Thomas in Air 7 HD over the scene. Bill.
David, that's a small group we followed from Leimert Park up Crenshaw Boulevard. They just made that westbound turn onto King Boulevard right by the Crenshaw Plaza. The size of that group, pretty small, 35, maybe 40 people. At first, they were marching northbound on Crenshaw without any police escort. At one point, though, they were blocking all lanes on both sides of Crenshaw Boulevard. LAPD officers moved in, crowd control. They blocked the whole street to let this group get through, and now they are westbound again on King Boulevard from Crenshaw. We'll open up the shot for you in just a bit. At times, they're in westbound lanes. At times, they're in east and westbound lanes. We'll detect on the right side of your screen eastbound traffic getting through, but some of the protesters, as you can see, holding up traffic there momentarily. And what you don't see is just down below you, about 100 yards to the west, there'll be a number of LAPD officers here holding up traffic to help these guys get through. Once again, look at the size of the crowd. It's relatively small. It's been peaceful so far. We haven't observed any arrests. Reporting live from Air 7 HD, I'm Bill Thomas, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
All right, Bill, thank you. And again, we are waiting for President Obama to make some remarks from the White House regarding the grand jury's decision not to indict Officer Darren Wilson. Of course, we'll bring it to you live as soon as he takes the podium. And stay with Eyewitness News for continuing coverage of the Ferguson grand jury decision tonight. And be sure to check in with ABC7.com and our social media sites throughout the evening for the latest pictures and videos from the scene there in Missouri.
And today's grand jury decision in Missouri was being closely watched by local families who lost loved ones in law enforcement shootings. That includes the family of Carlos Oliva, killed during a confrontation with a sheriff's deputy in the city Terrace area. Coming up at 7:30, what Oliva's family is saying about today's grand jury decision, and of course we will keep our eyes on Ferguson as well. Now to a wild and dangerous pursuit that's turned into a standoff, forcing a neighborhood into lockdown. It all started in Palmdale this afternoon and continued on several freeways, coming to a head in Culver City. Eyewitness News reporter Alex Michelson has more.
The suspect finally gives up after several hours on a rooftop and several loud messages from a sheriff's department helicopter. The sheriff's department says those messages didn't work, but a flashbang did.
He got up and he started walking around. He then went back to the original door, which we were able to open up, and he talked through the door to the arrest team from the Special Enforcement Bureau. He agreed to go ahead and give up.
All this hours after a wild pursuit. At times, the driver is speeding at more than 105 miles per hour during a pursuit that begins in Palmdale, then heads towards Los Angeles. The suspect is so desperate, he drives on the side of a crowded freeway. He's wanted for a drive-by shooting and narcotics violations. On side streets, he completely ignores all rules of the road. Then, he ditches his vehicle in Culver City and runs on foot. He's spotted walking in a wash. He climbs a fence and heads towards an apartment building. He climbs to the roof of the apartment, looks around, and then starts getting resourceful. He opens a water tap, washes himself off, and even drinks some of the water. Then he starts building a barricade to prevent the police from entering. He uses anything he can find. He even pulls cinder blocks that were near a satellite dish and carries them towards the door.
All right, let's go right to President Obama making remarks from the White House.
Deliberating the death of Michael Brown issued its decision. It's now come that either way was going to be subject of intense disagreement, not only in Ferguson, but across America. So I just want to say a few words suggesting how we might move forward. First and foremost, we are a nation built on the rule of law. And so we need to accept that this decision was the grand jury's to make. There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully. Let me repeat Michael's father's words. Hurting others or destroying property is not the answer. No matter what the grand jury decides, I do not want my son's death to be in vain. I want it to lead to incredible change, positive change, change that makes the St. Louis region better for everyone. Now, Michael Brown's parents have lost more than anyone. We should be honoring their wishes. I also appeal to the law enforcement officials in Ferguson and the region to show care and restraint in managing peaceful protests that may occur. Understand, our police officers put their lives on the line for us every single day. They've got a tough job to do to maintain public safety and hold accountable those who break the law. As they do their jobs in the coming days, they need to work with the community, not against the community, to distinguish the handful of people who may use the grand jury's decision as an excuse for violence, distinguish them from the vast majority who just want their voices heard around legitimate issues in terms of how communities and law enforcement interact. Finally, we need to recognize that the situation in Ferguson speaks to broader challenges that we still face as a nation. The fact is, in too many parts of this country, a deep distrust exists between law enforcement and communities of color. Some of this is the result of the legacy of racial discrimination in this country. And this is tragic because nobody needs good policing more than poor communities with higher crime rates. The good news is we know there are things we can do to help. And I've instructed Attorney General Holder to work with cities across the country to help build better relations between communities and law enforcement. That means working with law enforcement officials to make sure their ranks are representative of the communities they serve. We know that makes a difference. It means working to train officials so that law enforcement conducts itself in a way that is fair to everybody. It means enlisting the community actively on what should be everybody's goal, and that is to prevent crime. And there are good people on all sides of this debate, as well as in both Republican and Democratic parties, that are interested not only in lifting up best practices, because we know that there are communities who've been able to deal with this in an effective way, but also who are interested in working with this administration and local and state officials to start tackling much needed criminal justice reform. So those should be the lessons that we draw from these tragic events. We need to recognize that this is not just an issue for Ferguson, this is an issue for America. We have made enormous progress in race relations over the course of the past several decades. I have witnessed that in my own life, and to deny that progress, I think, is to deny America's capacity for change. But what is also true is that there are still problems, and communities of color aren't just making these problems up. Separating that from this particular decision, there are issues in which the law too often feels as if it is being applied in a discriminatory fashion. I don't think that's the norm. I don't think that's true for the majority of communities or the vast majority of law enforcement officials, but these are real issues. And we have to lift them up and not deny them or try to tamp them down. What we need to do is to understand them and figure out how do we make more progress. And that can be done. That won't be done by throwing bottles. That won't be done by smashing car windows. That won't be done by using this as an excuse to vandalize property, and it certainly won't be done by hurting anybody. To those in Ferguson, there are ways of channeling your concerns constructively, and there are ways of channeling your concerns destructively. Michael Brown's parents understand what it means to be constructive. The vast majority of peaceful protesters, they understand it as well. Those of you who are watching tonight understand that there's never an excuse for violence, particularly when there are a lot of people in goodwill out there who are willing to work on these issues. On the other hand, those who are only interested in focusing on the violence and just want the problem to go away need to recognize that we do have work to do here, and we shouldn't try to paper it over. Whenever we do that, the anger may momentarily subside, but over time it builds up, and America isn't everything that it could be. And I am confident that if we focus our attention on the problem and we look at what has happened in communities around the country effectively, then we can make progress not just in Ferguson, but in a lot of other cities and communities around the country. Okay?
Mr. President, will you go to Ferguson when things settle down there?
Well, let's take a look and see how things are going. Eric Holder's been there. We've had a whole team from the Justice Department there, and I think that they have done some very good work. As I said, the vast majority of the community has been working very hard to try to make sure that this becomes an opportunity for us to seize the moment and turn this into a positive situation. But I think that we have to make sure that we focus at least as much attention on all those positive activities that are taking place as we do on a handful of folks who end up using this as an excuse to misbehave or to break the law or to engage in violence. I think that it's going to be very important, and I think the media is going to have a responsibility as well to make sure that we focus on Michael Brown's parents and the clergy and the community leaders and the civil rights leaders and the activists and law enforcement officials who have been working very hard to try to find better solutions, long-term solutions to this issue. There is inevitably going to be some negative reaction, and it'll make for good TV. But what we want to do is to make sure that we're also focusing on those who can offer the kind of real progress that we know is possible. That the vast majority of people in Ferguson, the St. Louis region, in Missouri, and around the country are looking for. And I want to be partners with those folks, and we need to lift up that kind of constructive dialogue that's taking place. All right?
Thank you very much. No federal charges, Mr. President? No federal charges?
All right. You have been listening to President Obama live from the White House, but if you were watching your screen, you could see the goings-on in Ferguson at the exact same time. While he was asking people if they are in disagreement to protest peacefully, we see things are generally starting to go out of control in Ferguson. We saw a number of tear gas canisters being fired at the crowd, and then the crowd picking them up and literally throwing them back at the police officers. You see a tremendous amount of smoke out there, Colleen. We've been watching this. Things extremely tense right now in Ferguson.
Oh, very much so. And, you know, you've been seeing it. We've been seeing some reports that some protesters have not been so peaceful. They've been rocking some police cars, vandalizing some possibly. And, you know, this comes right after President Obama just said, please, you know, heed the sort of peace calls from Michael Brown's parents saying, don't act in violence. Violence is not going to be good. And you can see it right now. Right. Just moments ago, we saw the protesters throwing the canisters back at the police, and we saw some small fires.
A very good shot of the crowd. Now, that, when you see the season's greeting sign, That is right at the police department. The police department is on the left-hand side. The right-hand side is a parking lot where we have been watching this crowd develop. And then now the camera from the helicopter is panning towards where most of the action is going on. A lot of tear gas in that general area. That man standing in the middle of the street with his hands up, we believe, is a protester. So there's a lot of dissension inside this group. From what I understand, about 15 minutes after this announcement was made, according to the Associated Press, we could hear a bullhorn of the police department telling the crowd to disperse because they're starting to call this an unlawful assembly, and they wanted the crowd to move away, to disperse. Clearly they did not. In fact, that raised the ire of the crowd, and things progressively have gotten worse since then.
And also, just reading up on this from the Associated Press as well, David, gunshots were heard down the street, and somebody threw a water bottle that bounced off a police shield. So obviously, some are reportedly trying to stop the others from taking part in the vandalism, but others are continuing with violence. And we heard the mayor of St. Louis, we heard the governor of Missouri saying, please act peaceful. We do know people are going to be upset with the grand jury's decision not to indict Officer Darren Wilson, but as you can see, we have multiple live shots here, but you can see that the police are trying to stay put right there.
What's going on there is those police vehicles are trying to move forward. That one protester, kind of like what we saw in Tiananmen Square with that one man standing in front of the tanks, he stood in front of them, not allowing them to go forward. Now he has walked away, but those vehicles did push forward. You see a crowd down below you that is gathering, and this crowd seems to be flowing and in constant flux. And all of this happening right in front of the Ferguson Police Department. There's a huge law enforcement gathering there as well, but clearly the crowd outnumbers them. And I heard reports earlier that they really geared up for any potential violence that could be occurring in Ferguson.
Governor Nixon called a state of emergency. They do have the National Guard out there as well. Stay with us. We will be right back.
Jonathan, you're up after a 30-second update, okay?
I can't tell which one we have on. We have this.
Yeah. All right, there's a shot of the chaos going on live right now in Ferguson, right in front of the police department. You see the tear gas canisters going off They just fired them into the crowd. Many members of the crowd, again, are trying to pick up the canisters and throw them back at police. These, once again, are live pictures. You can see the chaos, the violence building. We obviously are going to keep an eye on this situation. This is turning out to be exactly what people had feared could happen with this decision.
Absolutely. And of course, while we monitor that, we have another big story today. Here locally, red flag warnings in effect. Let's go to meteorologist Jonathan Novak for the latest.
Colleen, David, folks, winds today, we're gusting over 35, 40 miles an hour in places like Van Nuys, where actually I was just checking, and winds are still up around there tonight. Red flag warnings in effect for just about all the mountain areas around LA and Ventura County, as well as the San Bernardino, Riverside County, and Orange County mountain areas, and especially around the foothills, where we'll see gusts from 60 to 70 overnight tonight, where there are high wind warnings down to the southern county. So that goes through Wednesday. The high wind warning and the red flag warning increased danger for wildfires to break out. There you go, Van Nuys still gusting at 20 right now, sustained actually. That's a sustained wind, 20 miles an hour. The culprit is high pressure off to the west of us, very strong Santa Ana winds coming down around that high. They'll be around for a couple of days, so windy conditions tomorrow, especially in the morning time, and then again through tomorrow night into Wednesday before things subside, including that fire danger, which will last through Wednesday. Then we start looking ahead to rain. We have a big rain chance in the forecast, folks. It's coming up here in a second in the 7-day. But for tonight, clear skies. We're going to see gusts over 35, 40 miles an hour, especially in the canyons, with lows around freezing. In the Antelope Valley, in fact, there's a frost advisory for you guys up in the Antelope Valley. So 84 tomorrow to 86 on Wednesday. Very warm weather, windy for 2 days, fire danger on the increase. And then for the weekend, we cool down. Rain chances are significant Sunday and Monday. Thanksgiving is looking good. Valleys, IE, as well, looking very warm and windy the next few days. The weekend, we see things cool down significantly. 64 next Sunday and Monday with a good rain chance. We're looking at for a couple of inches potentially. The beaches, around 80 for a couple of days. Nice Thanksgiving. Rain chance ahead for the weekend. The mountains, we're looking for a real chance of snow, potentially 10 to 15 inches by next Monday. Until then, it is mild and breezy, and the high desert as well. Winds kicking up a little bit, sunny and mild for a few days, and then rain chances by Saturday night. Back to you guys at the desk.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much. And stay with us. We have some more live coverage coming out right now from the Crenshaw district, where protesters are making their way through from Lamar Park. We're going to have live details from Air 7 HD. Stay with us.
This is Eyewitness News on LA56 with live breaking news.
Our top story at 7:30, angry reaction to the grand jury's decision in the Michael Brown shooting. I'm David Ono.
And I'm Colleen Sullivan. This is Eyewitness News on LA56, LA's only live local newscast at 7:30 p.m. This is a live look at what's taking place in Ferguson, Missouri after it was announced that the grand jury decided not to charge Officer Darren Wilson. Police confirmed shots have been fired near the police department and a police car had its back window shattered. Police are also responding to reports of looting. Also earlier we were talking about possible tear gas, not tear gas. Police in Ferguson, Missouri are using smoke and pepper spray on the Ferguson crowd after the protests started to grow violent. President Obama called on Americans to keep the peace soon after the grand jury's announcement was made.
After their exhaustive review of the evidence, the grand jury deliberated over 2 days, making their final decision. They determined that no probable cause exists to file any charge against Officer Wilson and returned a no true bill on each of the 5 indictments.
We are a nation built on the rule of law. And so we need to accept that this decision was the grand jury's to make. There are Americans who agree with it, and there are Americans who are deeply disappointed, even angry. It's an understandable reaction. But I join Michael's parents in asking anyone who protests this decision to do so peacefully.
President Obama, just a few minutes ago, the grand jury has been meeting weekly since August to consider evidence in this case.
And now let's go to the Crenshaw District where we find Air 7 HD and JT Alpaw with the latest. JT?
Well, we're looking at a group of about 50 or 60. This is a group that came from Lamert Park. They walked northbound on Crenshaw at about 50 or 60. Then they came westbound on Martin Luther King. A very peaceful crowd at this point right now. This is a splinter group that came out from that main protest that was happening at the park. Like we said, about 50 or 60. They have taken over the street right now, but LAPD has not determined that it's an unlawful assembly. Now, if they were to take over an intersection or something like that, that'd be a different story. LAPD is currently on TAC alert here in South Los Angeles. In fact, the whole department's on tactical alert. And what they're doing right now is they're sending LAPD motorcycle motor squads up ahead in what they call leapfrogging, up ahead of these protesters walking in the street, making sure traffic is stopped and that they're safe. They can safely travel up and down the street here right now. We haven't seen anything violent so far, just carrying the signs, probably shouting, obviously. But so far, we haven't seen them trying to take over any cars. A couple of motor officers were zigzagging through some of the crowd, but that has become more spread out as they march further along here. They're currently northbound on La Brea, and they are approaching the Jefferson. They just passed Rodeo through the intersection. They're coming up on Jefferson, moving their way towards the Santa Monica Freeway. Now, that's a different story. If they start marching towards the freeway, which we've seen before, protesters trying to take over the freeway, they're going to try to block that from happening. They'll have blocking forces, strike teams in the area to make sure these protesters don't do anything like try to stop the Santa Monica Freeway at La Brea. But right now, so far, extremely peaceful. It started out, they were more bulked together, but so far they're split up, and LAPD is going to keep a close watch on this group. We'll keep you updated. Reporting live from Air 7 HD, JT Albaugh, ABC7, Eyewitness News.
Thank you, JT. And although the grand jury did not indict Officer Darren Wilson in the shooting of Michael Brown, he may still face some legal problems.
What we've learned is that the grand jury in state court in Missouri is not indicting. It is possible that a federal grand jury could still indict. I think it's unlikely in light of the fact that the state grand jury so carefully looked at the evidence and didn't indict. But no matter what happens in the criminal system, the family can, and my guess is likely will, sue Officer Wilson for money damages.
Professor Chemerinsky also thinks it is positive that the prosecutor will make all the evidence in this case public so everyone can draw their own conclusions. In the meantime, some local families are following the grand jury decision in Ferguson very closely. Eyewitness News reporter Carlos Granda has the details.
Como le pasó a mi hijo, le está pasando a otras personas. Y eso yo lo miro cada día.
Olga Sola and her daughter Bianca Oliva watch what is happening in Ferguson every day, and it brings back difficult memories.
Yeah, it's the same thing, I know. The world needs to know what's going on.
23-year-old Carlos Oliva was shot and killed 1 year ago during a confrontation with Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies in the City Terrace area.
I don't deal with it. I just don't go out. My life isn't the same.
Sheriff's officials say the suspect had a gun and he pointed it at deputies, and that's when they pulled out their weapons and fired. But the family says they want a federal investigation.
Yo no creo.
She says she doesn't have confidence in the system. The family of Ezell Ford is also asking for a federal investigation, and they filed a federal civil rights lawsuit. Ford was killed by Los Angeles police. Ford's parents say the young man was unarmed and mentally ill and want the officers to face criminal charges. Police say Ford tried to grab the officer's gun during a struggle.
Well, what we all want, justice. That's about it.
Do you think it'll ever happen?
No.
Why not?
The system is broken.
The family has an attorney and is now waiting to see what happens at the federal level. Meanwhile, LAPD Chief Charlie Beck is asking for any eyewitnesses in the Ezell Ford case to come forward. Both of these cases are still under investigation. Reporting from City Terrace, I'm Carlos Granda, ABC7 Eyewitness News.
All right, we want to take you back to Ferguson, and this right now is in front of the police station. Live pictures. The crowd has dispersed. So when we saw police throwing smoke, using some pepper spray, the crowd dispersed quickly. I'm sorry, we're looking at some other, this is live pictures right now of a fire going on in a trash can. We don't know if it was set by protesters or maybe it could have happened with a smoke canister because they burn very hot. But here's the live picture that I was talking about. Overhead, police station in Ferguson, the crowd has dispersed. So the smoke has worked, at least in this area of Ferguson. The crowd has moved on to some other area. There is a huge police presence in front of the police station right now. Police in riot gear, hundreds of members of a police department in riot gear standing on that street right now. Things have quieted in this area, but of course we're continuing to watch the situation. We're looking for the crowd. As we get more information, we'll turn it over to you.
Also tonight, preparing for the potential danger of a school shooting brought students, staff, and police together in Rialto today. An active shooter drill was staged today at Carter High School. School is currently not in session this week because of the Thanksgiving holiday. The training used volunteers and was recorded for a video that will be made available to students and families.
With parents' permissions, we have a lot of our student actors, our thespians, our young drama clubs were supportive, our teachers, our staff was supportive, and the training is basically to educate, enlighten, and train our staff for any sort of potential harm that may come on us.
The video is expected to be ready in January.
Local officials have released a photo of the suspect in a vicious attack on a Metro bus driver. The attack happened 1 week ago in West Hills at the corner of Victory Boulevard and Valley Circle Boulevard. Officials identify the suspect as 24-year-old Giovanni Falcon. Investigators say that he beat up a 59-year-old female bus driver. Officials describe him as, quote, unstable, volatile, and highly dangerous.
There was a brutal assault on a female bus operator Monday night, November 17th. We know who the suspect is, but we need the public's assistance to find him and bring him to justice. This senseless act is just totally unacceptable.
The female bus driver is recovering from the attack. Anyone with information should contact authorities.
And we are approaching the busiest travel week of the year. Eyewitness News reporter Robert Olguin gives us a behind-the-scenes look at how LAX is preparing for the holiday rush.
At the ticket counters in Terminal 7, the momentum is starting to build.
Everyone's confused. They have lots going on.
Vernon Doherty usually works behind the scenes at United Airlines, but this week he's on the front lines helping incoming passengers at LAX.
Trying to make sure everyone make the process as painless as possible and get them to where they're going for their holidays.
Behind the ticket counters, luggage is being screened by TSA officers who x-ray every single checked bag.
Every group's prepared, organized, and here early and staying late to make sure things go smooth.
Luggage is then sorted, then carted off to the tarmac before it's loaded into the belly of the plane by people like Joe Thomas.
I've been doing this 18 years, and it always gets crazy every year about this time.
Then workers push the planes into position.
They tell us which way to go. It's going to be Joe West onto this way.
This is just one of United's Boeing 787 Dreamliners. And to the uninitiated, things might seem a little chaotic here behind the scenes, but folks here tell me that this is a well-oiled machine.
I sort of liken an operations at an airport a little bit to an orchestra.
Jennifer Dahm is a spokeswoman for United Airlines.
There's so many little different pieces, and there's definitely a maestro kind of making everything happen, but everyone sort of needs their part in order for the music to play or the plane to take off.
Last question here. Can I start pushing buttons?
No, let's leave that to the professionals.
At LAX, the United Terminal alone accommodates more than 17,000 arrivals and more than 17,000 departures daily. Those numbers will spike this week, especially on Sunday.
It takes many, many different people to make an airplane fly.
It does. Up next, we're going to have more coverage from Ferguson on the riots, not the protesters that are taking place right now in Ferguson. Take a look right there. We did see some dramatic images a moment ago of a police car that looked like it was on fire and possibly exploding.
Quickly want to take you back to Ferguson. This is a live picture again. We believe that is a police car that was somehow set on fire. It has been exploding on and off for the last minute or so. But we don't know the circumstances of how this caught on fire, but this was the central point where we saw all the smoke going off and the confrontation between police and the crowd, and there are a number of police officers in the area. Sorry for video breakup right now, but we know there's a number of officers in the area with full riot gear on, and I can't tell if those are just folks standing around watching the situation, protesters or police officers. Getting awfully dark out there, but still a lot going on in Ferguson, Missouri right now.
Absolutely, and stay with us for continuing live coverage of that. But let's go over to meteorologist Jonathan Novak to talk about our wind, our humidity, and red flag warning.
Lack of humidity.
Lack of it, right.
Yeah, when you get that with the strong winds that we've had, we have the red flag warnings in place. Dangerous winds, in fact. On top of the dry air and the warm conditions, the winds are going to continue tonight. We'll start with the live Mega Doppler 7000 HD to show it is dry. But this is going to get busy in the latter half of the forecast. I'll get to that. Let's first get to the next few days because we have red flag warnings in place from now until Wednesday at 6 p.m. for the mountain areas of just about everywhere in Southern California. So winds gusting over 60 in some portions of Orange County, San Bernardino, and Riverside County through the passes and through the foothill areas for tonight overnight. And that is why there's a high wind warning for gusts over 60 for the southern counties here, the Orange County, San Bernardino, Riverside County areas for tonight. Those winds will back off a little bit Tuesday night into Wednesday, but still a breezy next few days on top of the warm air and the dry conditions means the red flag warnings are in place as well for a few days. It is still windy at 20 miles an hour in Van Nuys, a breezy night in some of the valley locations. already, and this high pressure is the reason why it is really strong. It is way off to the west, but it is a huge dome. You see all these clouds arcing over that high. So this is going to be in place for a few days before it breaks down, and we see the next storm system come in, and this is going to be a potent storm system Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday, and into Tuesday we could see plenty of snow, a foot of snow in portions of Southern California into the mountains, and a lot of rain in LA. But for tonight, it is going to be dry. It's going to be clear and windy. Freezing in the mountains, and the high desert, in fact, has a frost advisory for tonight overnight for temperatures right around freezing or so. So tomorrow morning, 53 in LA, 84 at 1 p.m. The 7-day forecast for LA Metro and Orange County. A few days of warm, windy, sunny weather, and then the weekend things cool down. The rain kicks in Saturday night in through Monday. 1 to 3 inches possible for this system. Valleys, IE, warm, really gusty tonight and into the morning time, and then by Friday you're cooling down. The weekend looking cloudy, cool. You're in the 60s by Sunday and Monday with rain chances increasing. The beaches are looking very nice for a couple of days. By the way, Thanksgiving Thursday is going to be great for everybody, so I might want to mention that. Mountains are going to be cold in the morning, and then you guys will start cooling off even more on Sunday. Look at your high on Sunday, 41, a high of 38 on Monday, so we've got really wet, cold weather and potentially a foot of snow for the mountains by Monday. The high desert's looking really nice for a few days, and temperatures tonight are going to be around freezing. Keep that in mind. And again, by the weekend, guys, we're looking for those rain chances to increase Saturday night, Sunday, and Monday for the first real storm system of the season. Thank goodness, finally.
All right. Thank you, Jonathan. According to President Obama, the world is stronger, wiser, and more humane thanks to the generosity of those honored today with the Presidential Medal of Freedom. The awards were given out during a ceremony at the White House. Actress Meryl Streep, singer-songwriter Stevie Wonder, and Ethel Kennedy are among the more than dozen politicians, entertainment artists, and civil rights activists who were honored. The Medal of Freedom is the highest civilian honor that can be given.
All right, we're going to stay on top of the situation in Ferguson. Once again, a live picture from Ferguson right now. That burning police car, a huge police presence right now. The crowd has dispersed to another area, but we're continuing to watch the situation, so stay with us.
Let's take you back out live to Ferguson, Missouri right now, where you can see the police car. We believe is a police car has been on fire now for several minutes, and we've seen multiple explosions coming from this vehicle. Protesters have been out in force in Ferguson, so have police officers and riot gear, keeping them at bay. This seems to have worked in the area. They used some pepper spray and some smoke canisters to disperse the crowds. The crowd has dispersed, but we do not know exactly if they've reorganized somewhere else. Of course, we are keeping a watch on it. And also, the Associated Press said some of the crowds that were reportedly getting violent, some of the people in the crowd tried to stop the violence from happening. But again, this is live pictures out of Ferguson, Missouri tonight, where protesters are taking the streets after the grand jury did not indict Officer Darren Wilson in the shooting death of Michael Brown.
All right, we have some big problems developing here in Los Angeles as well. Protesters who splintered off from Leimert Park and marched through Crenshaw Boulevard are doing exactly what some people had feared they would do and headed towards the 10 freeway, causing all sorts of problems. Let's go to JT Alpa in Air 7 HD, who has been watching what's been going on. JT.
Yeah, David, very tense situation. And those protesters that were marching northbound on La Brea made their way onto the off-ramp, that is the westbound off-ramp of the 10 freeway La Brea, made their way opposite direction onto the, the eastbound off-ramp onto the freeway, where they actually, 4 or 5 of them got onto the freeway. What you're seeing right now is a skirmish line of California Highway Patrol officers using their batons and pushing this crowd back of about 40 or 50. They made it onto the freeway. The freeway got stopped in time. There were none of the protesters were struck. But right now we've got a small skirmish line. They're trying to get these protesters back down eastbound off the on-ramp and try to get this freeway reopened. You're going to see they're starting to run back right now. LAPD overhead with their night sun, directing the command and control of this whole situation, being directed out of the command post, trying to keep track of this group, telling them where they're going, and they got the CHP in place just in the nick of time. About 5 or 6 officers came down, but they snuck around some of the patrol cars at the bottom of the off-ramp, and now they're trying to push them back down. A very tense situation here, got very, very dangerous. Again, about 40 or 50 protesters made their way onto that 10 freeway, that eastbound 10 freeway at La Brea. For a moment it was shut down. It looks like it is moving right now. You can see the contingency of CHP officers there. Completely got that. All the lanes are open right now. It looks like the off-ramp and maybe that right transition road to the La Brea northbound may be closed as well. But they're trying to slowly push them off using a small skirmish line, push them back down the off-ramp right now to get them back onto La Brea and control them. They've got blocking forces set up on the other on-ramps and on-ramps and off-ramps at La Brea, trying to block those access from any of these protesters from making their way back on the freeway, which clearly was their intention. A very tense situation. You see this flashbulb popping right now. The press and the media down there trying to document what's going on here, but it looks like a skirmish line. They've got their batons at a parallel. They're slowly pushing this crowd back down to La Brea. They're about halfway down the ramp right now, but a very, very tense situation. You can see a few of the officers up on that other overpass, making sure none of them double back and come back around them to try to get back on the freeway. But right now it looks like the CHP getting headway on this group, trying to get them back down onto La Brea. Very tense situation, very dangerous. The cars had to come to a very quick halt on this eastbound 10 freeway in La Brea, while about 4 or 5 protesters made it into at least the 2 or 3 right lanes before they got pushed back onto the off-ramp. We'll keep you advised of what happens here, keep you updated on this activity of this group as they continue their protest march. Reporting live from Air 7 HD, JT Alpha, ABC7, Eyewitness News. Throw it back to you guys.
JT, you obviously pulled out and you showed us some of the traffic on the surface streets right there, but the 10, obviously very high volume freeway. Can you get a gist of how this is affecting the traffic on the freeway?
Well, we're looking at both the eastbound and the westbound lanes right now, and we've got the westbound lanes from downtown is extremely slow. This is a lot of looky-loo traffic, and I'm looking back to the west at the eastbound traffic. It looks like it's completely backed up all the way to the 405. This is definitely a situation that is causing looky-loo traffic on both directions with all the activity out here. But right now, again, all lanes appear to be open. It just slowed down right there at La Brea. You can see the big shot here. We'll hold this shot for a second. Look at all those officers on the on-ramps and on the off-ramps trying to make a presence to keep them blocked, to keep them from getting back up there. LAPD calling in more strike forces to get more officers here. to help the CHP out with keeping them off the freeway. But yeah, a lot of traffic through this area. It's not going to get any better anytime soon until they move along.
Absolutely. JT, thank you so much for giving us that live report. Also, LA Mayor Eric Garcetti is on a trade trip to the Far East, but just released a statement saying, quote, Michael Brown's death has ignited deep passions across the nation, and Los Angeles is no exception. Tonight's decision is one that will be heatedly debated, but we should do so through dialogue and peaceful action. City departments are mobilized to assist in the exercise of peaceful protest, end quote.
All right, we want to recap what has been going on, specifically in Ferguson. Now, you see the police officers dressed to the hilt in riot gear. That is that police car that we have been watching burning, and it had been exploding a number of different times. There you see the large presence of a lot of people that are gathering on the streets, some of them protesters, and then law enforcement there as well. And there was a huge altercation right directly in front of the police station where smoke canisters were fired, pepper spray was fired. Obviously, some of these fires, we don't know if they were set by protesters or they were set by the very hot canisters going on. That is just a trash fire happening there, but it looks very dramatic in the middle of the night. We watched this all live from overhead, a helicopter, as this crowd gathered. They asked the crowd to disperse about 15 minutes after the announcement was made about no indictments, and the crowd did not disperse. In fact, they built up steam. But all these images coming from Ferguson, Missouri tonight. We'll be right back.
And we will have much more from Ferguson when we come back. And we are back out in Ferguson, Missouri right now, where you can see more fires. This is another police car on fire. Certainly not the explosions as we've seen with the earlier police car, but there's a large police presence again right now forming. A lot of people gathering in this area, Ferguson, Missouri, of course, because of the grand jury's decision not to indict the officer involved in the shooting death of Michael Brown. But again, very tense. It's going to be a very long evening. Police have been in kind of combat with the protesters, throwing smoke canisters and pepper spray. So stay with us.
And a lot going on here in Los Angeles as well. Protesters at one time blocking part of the 10 freeway. We're going to have a full report on this Ferguson situation in Ferguson as well as Los Angeles. And ABC7 Eyewitness News at 11 p.m. and ABC7.com.